201 million years ago, Earth was a world of giants. But these were not the giants you know. This was not the age of Tyrannosaurus or Triceratops. This was a world ruled by a different dynasty, a lineage of spectacular and terrifying predators. Then, in a geological instant, a fiery apocalypse tore the world apart. The dominant rulers were almost completely erased, making way for a new empire. And the humble creatures that inherited this shattered planet were the dinosaurs. But why did they survive when their far more dominant cousins vanished? To understand this mystery, we must travel back to the late Triassic. This was a hot, arid supercontinent called Pangaea. And it was teeming with life, dominated by a group called the Archosaurs. But this group was split into two great families. On one side were the bird-line Archosaurs, which included the small, new dinosaurs. On the other side were the pseudosuchians, the Croc-line Archosaurs. And in the Triassic, the Croc-line was winning. They were not the river lurkers we know today. They were the undisputed masters of the land. They filled every major ecological niche. Giant apex predators. Creatures like Postosuchus, a 2-foot-long bipedal terror. Fast, armored herbivores covered the plains. And massive, tank-like atosaurs browsed the vegetation. These giant crocodilian relatives were the titans of their time, diverse and dominant. And the dinosaurs? They were small, marginal, and living in the shadows of these true Triassic kings. They were the underdogs, seemingly holding no advantage. But they possessed a hidden toolkit, one that would soon be tested by fire. The Triassic world, stable for millions of years, was about to tear itself apart. Deep beneath the supercontinent of Pangaea, massive plumes of magma began to rise. The continent was beginning to fracture. And as it split, it opened a wound in the Earth's crust that would bleed fire for 600,000 years. This was not a single volcano. This was the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, or CAMP, one of the largest flood basalt events in our planet's history. It was a fissure that stretched for thousands of kilometers, releasing a volume of lava so vast it could have buried the entire continental United States under half a kilometer of molten rock. The eruption began. Trillions of tons of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide flooded the sky. The sun was blotted out by a thick, sulfuric haze. This triggered the first blow of the extinction. A global volcanic winter that sent temperatures plummeting. Photosynthesis failed on a planetary scale. The vast forests of Pangaea withered and died. The entire food chain built on these plants collapsed from the bottom up. The giant herbivores, the armored dinosaurs, began to starve. The apex predators, like Postosuchus, soon followed. Their size, once their greatest strength, had now become their fatal vulnerability. They needed immense amounts of food, and the food was gone. But this cold, dark winter was only the first act. Then came the fire. As the volcanic aerosols rained out of the atmosphere, the CO2 remained. And it continued to pour out year after year for millennia. This wasn't just climate change. It was a runaway greenhouse effect on a terrifying scale. Global temperatures didn't just rise, they spiked. Average temperatures soared, perhaps by 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. The planet began to cook. Vast stretches of the supercontinent became uninhabitable deserts. The oceans turned toxic. Carbon dioxide dissolved into the water, creating carbonic acid. This mass ocean acidification dissolved the shells of countless marine creatures. The oceans became a hot, acidic, oxygen-starved graveyard. On land and in the sea, life was being suffocated, starved, and boiled. This was the Triassic-Jurassic mass extinction, and it would wipe out over 75% of all species on Earth. The great crocodilian rulers, already starving, now faced a new invisible enemy, a superheated atmosphere they simply could not survive. Their reign was over. The thrones of the world were now empty. The fire subsided. The earth was quiet. This was the dawn of the Jurassic, an empty, desolate, ash-covered world. The reign of the great Pseudoscians, the mighty crocodile-line rulers, was over. Their entire dynasty, built for a stable Triassic, was almost completely annihilated. Their massive bodies required a robust food chain that no longer existed. And their cold-blooded physiology, scientists believe, simply couldn't handle the new world. They were metabolically trapped, unable to function in the volcanic winters or the scorching greenhouse heat. The giants were gone. But in the undergrowth, life stirred. The survivors emerged, the small, unassuming, bipedal dinosaurs. They had lived for millions of years in the shadows of the great Crocs. But they carried a secret arsenal, a revolutionary survival toolkit. And this apocalyptic filter was the precise event they were built for. So, what was their advantage? It starts with their lungs. Dinosaurs possessed a remarkably efficient respiratory system, much like modern birds. They had flow-through lungs, supplemented by a series of air sacs. This system allowed them to extract far more oxygen from every single breath. In the thin, toxic, low-oxygen atmosphere of the post-extinction world, this was a superpower. While other animals were suffocating, the dinosaurs could keep moving. Then, their metabolism. Strong evidence suggests early dinosaurs were, at minimum, mesothermic. They were warm-blooded. Unlike the cold-blooded Crocs, they weren't slaves to the ambient temperature. They could generate their own body heat to survive the freezing volcanic winters. And they could remain active, hunting and foraging, while their rivals were frozen in torpor. Finally, their size. In the old world, their small stature was a liability. In this new barren world, it was their single greatest asset. A small body needs far less food. They could survive on the scraps, the insects, the hardy ferns, the tiny burrowing animals. While the giants starved in weeks, the small dinosaurs could endure. Efficient lungs, a warm body, and a small appetite. This was the toolkit that passed the test of the Great Filter, the key that would unlock a new age. The Triassic-Jurassic boundary was a planetary reset button. The great crocodile-line titans, the pseudosuchians, were gone. Their extinction left a profound ecological vacuum. The thrones of the apex predators were empty. The entire architecture of life had to be rebuilt from the survivors. And the dinosaurs, once small and marginal, walked out of the shadows. For the first time, there were no giant predators to hunt them. There were no massive, dominant herbivores to compete with. The world was theirs for the taking, an empty canvas of catastrophic opportunity. This wasn't just survival, it was an inheritance. Their hidden toolkit, forged in obscurity, now made them the new masters. They began to diversify. Those small, warm-blooded survivors exploded into new forms. The sauropodomorphs targeted the recovering forests, their efficient lungs fueling a race to enormous size. This lineage would produce the long-necked giants of the Jurassic. The largest land animals the planet has ever known. Other survivors, the theropods, refined their predatory adaptations. The Age of Tyrants. Small hunters like Coelophysis were the ancestors of Allosaurus. And eventually, Tyrannosaurus rex. The very creatures that cowered under the Triassic Crocs now gave rise to the most terrifying predators in Earth's history. The dinosaurs had not just survived the apocalypse. They had conquered the new world it created. They would rule this planet unchallenged for the next 140 million years. The story of the Triassic-Jurassic extinction is a profound lesson in what survival truly means. The traits that guarantee dominance in one world can be a fatal liability in the next. Strength is temporary, but resilience is eternal. And sometimes the meek, built with a better, more efficient engine, are the ones who are truly destined to inherit the Earth. If you would like to join us on our next expedition into Earth's darkest hours in search of the light of life, consider joining our Researchers Guild by subscribing to the channel. And let us know in the comments which dinosaur adaptation, their lungs, their metabolism, or their small size do you think was the most critical for surviving the Great Filter?